Luka Doncic and his record and his ability to just constantly break records like it's nobody's business. He's one of those players that's going to make the record books his own personal diary. Similar to how Patrick Mahomes is going to be the next face of the league. Luka Doncic is probably going to follow suit with that, along with Nikola Jokic. Now, talking about Luka specifically and the record that he broke, obviously like 6 straight games averaging a 30-point triple double is ridiculous, and it's really like there's nobody that can do it like him other than Jokic. And that's sort of the problem that Luka Doncic has always been facing, because he always has the skill sets. He always has what he needs to be the MVP. But there's always that one other player that just has something over him. Like in this case, it's going to be Nikola Jokic, who has the better team. That's the thing that Nikola Jokic has over him. Because when you really think about it, their production, Jokic's production and Luka Doncic's production, they're roughly the same. In the sense that like they both drop triple doubles. They both can score the ball very easily, and they both set up their teammates very well to get open looks, to get better looks, and to get good shots. So their production and their to a team is more or less the same. And not to mention, those two are some really good friends off the court and some of the funniest people in the NBA. So when you think about how both of them can produce like the exact same, there's really like it's a much more difficult argument for MVP, because if their production is exactly the same, then you're going to have to go based on team record. So, do you take the guy whose production is leading them to wins, or do you take the guy whose production is the same, but he's doing the best he can despite having a weak supporting cast? And it's very difficult to make that argument, because Jokic, being the main reason why the Nuggets are the best team, is not the same as saying that Luka should get the MVP because he has no help. It's not how that's not necessarily how the MVP works. And like it's essentially like best player on the best team. And if you are not the if you're not on the best team, chances are you're not going to win the MVP. However, there are some exceptions to that. And we previously mentioned Russell Westbrook, and he was one of those exceptions. He was a very low seed. His team only won 44 games that season, and I believe he was like a 6th seed in the Western Conference. And 6th or 7th, one of the two. I'm not entirely sure. But when he was the MVP, the reason why he won that MVP was only because Kevin Durant left him. Like, there was the story behind it. And he's so far he's been the only MVP that's at a relatively low seed and didn't lead his team to either the 1st, the 2nd, or the 3rd seed. And we have someone commenting in the chat. JSMC Sportsnet. Oh, it's one of my boss. I think the MVP is Jokic's to lose. That's absolutely right. It is Jokic's to lose simply based on team record and like the fact that he can produce as well as anybody else in this league. Like in previous years, when Luka didn't win the MVP, it was Giannis that was winning the MVP. And the reason why Giannis was winning the MVP was not only because the Bucks had the best record in the NBA, but because like the production that Giannis could bring on the offense was there. At the same time, he was also able to bring production to the defense. He won Defensive Player of the Year at one point. So that's another aspect of the game that just doesn't get talked about. Just defense in general, and the fact that if the Bucks weren't where they're at right now, and if they were like in the fighting for between the Celtics for the one spot in the Eastern Conference, I'd actually pick Giannis to be the MVP because again, his production on the offensive side of the ball is similar and just as efficient to Jokic's production as well as Luka Doncic's production while being able to play defense on everybody and produce on the defensive side of the ball. So in my opinion, if the Bucks like if they were competing in the Eastern Conference with the Boston Celtics, like if there wasn't a huge game difference, I think he would have been the favorite to be the MVP. But looking at the standings right now, Luka Doncic, while I don't think he's going to win the MVP just because of team record. Like he's not even top 4 in rankings, even though he went 6 games with a triple double. Like he is only 5. The person above him, Jason Tatum, who I actually don't think Jason Tatum should be above Luka Doncic whatsoever. That's an example of somebody who has a great team and is the best player on the best team. Like that starting lineup is ridiculously stacked. He's not winning the MVP just because that lineup is stacked. He doesn't even have to be the best player on the court 9 out of 10 times in order for his team to win games. He doesn't have to do that. So when you take that into account, I think like Jason Tatum should be 5 and Luka should be 4, but again, best player on the best team. That just has more priority. Number 3 is Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he's averaging 30, 11, and 6. Obviously, super efficient numbers. But the team right now is not where it needs to be. You guys know how I feel about Doc Rivers. I think he's one of the most overrated coaches in NBA history. He's really bad in the postseason. He doesn't make mid-game adjustments. He just doesn't know how to do things that I feel a good coach should know how to do. And if I'm expecting the coach to do something, it's because I've seen other coaches do something. Like when Doc Rivers was on that run with the Clippers in 2020 and they were blowing leads, as the team was catching up, usually a coach would call a timeout when the other team is catching up and be like, okay, we need to fix some things, right? Doc didn't do that. He would just sit there, go like this, complain to the refs, and wait. That is literally what he does. Just hands crossed, looking around, walking back and forth, complaining to the ref. That's the only thing that he's been doing. And it's infuriating to watch because he keeps getting job after job after job. And right now he's sort of become a joke because he gets fired every single time because he just can't win. And speaking of can't win, he lost to the Lakers without LeBron, but then he beat the Clippers. And now I'm really confused because are the Lakers a good team now? With because D'Angelo Russell, he dropped 44 points without LeBron James, and the Clippers, like they also played well, but then Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, they finally played well together, and in a fantastic game. Let me see what they did. They had a combined 69 points and 21 assists. They are the second pair of teammates to put up 30 plus points and 10 plus assists in the same game since 1980. So obviously it seemed like they figured it out that game. And when the Bucks are on their game, they're very, very difficult to stop. Just because, like, Damian Lillard, like, there are times where it feels like he's not going to miss. There are also times where just Giannis is just too dominant. And, again, this is a team that, like, if they figure it out, if they just play how they're supposed to play, they're going to win a lot of games. But so far, Damian Lillard has been a large reason why this team hasn't gone where it's needed to go. And if he's not performing in the playoffs, then I really think that Doc Rivers is going to get fired yet again. I just cannot stand him as a coach. He does not do anything for any team. He does not make any adjustments. He just goes in with the same game plan and prays to God that his team makes shots. And that's not something that you can afford to do in the postseason. You have to make adjustments because teams are going to look at film 24/7 and they are going to come up with a strategy to stop you. You need to have a counter for every counter for every counter in the postseason. And he just doesn't have that. He doesn't even have a counter for a counter. He doesn't have a counter, period. It's like if something doesn't work, he'll be like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it's broke, Doc. It's totally broke. But I digress. So more back to Luka because I was just talking about Luka and this turned into a rant about Doc Rivers. But Luka, until the team starts winning games and he starts being a top team competing, it's not looking good for him to win the MVP. And it might be seen as stat padding later in the future. And even though, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's stat padding, I think he's legitimately trying to do everything in his power to win games. But it's the fact that the Mavericks just don't win games. And Luka's a terrible defender, and this might be one of the largely overlooked reasons as to why the Mavs always keep losing some of these games. Because I remember last year they did not make the playoffs because they did not have defense. They had great scorers, Luka and Kyrie Irving, but it doesn't matter if they're the only two scoring and the other team can score on your guards like they're a bunch of cones parked on defense. It's really difficult, and like I really don't like how I really think that the MVP this year should be. I really think that it's going to be Jokic because of the team record and like his overall triple double prowess. But I really wanted it to be Giannis. Like in the beginning of the year, I really thought it was going to be Jokic and Giannis fighting for that MVP. Jokic, Giannis, and Joel Embiid. Those guys were going to be the ones that fought for the MVP, and I thought that Giannis was going to end up winning the MVP in the end. But it turns out that that's not what the case is. But with that, we are out of time for the first segment. So now we are going to go into the second segment where I'm going to talk about Kobe's statue. Now, the following contents might trigger a lot of people, so viewer discretion is advised because it definitely triggered me.